"You're not invited to the wedding," Chloe texted coldly. "Dylan's family doesn't want you." I smirked, replying, "So you chose status over blood." Then I canceled the $5,000 venue deposit, my money non-refundable, and deleted their wedding files. They had no idea what was coming. The phone buzzed on my scratched walnut desk, its screen slicing through the dim glow of my Chicago loft like a knife through flesh. I, a 38-year-old graphic designer named Alex Harper, stared at the message from my younger sister Chloe, 29. The words were icy, merciless, carved with surgical precision. "You're not invited to the wedding, Alex. Dylan's family doesn't want you there." No apology, no trace of warmth, just a brutal, pixelated rejection. My coffee sat untouched, its steam curling into the air like a fading dream. I read the text again, then a third time, my pulse hammering in my temples. My fingers trembled over the keyboard, a storm of rage and heartbreak churning inside me. Finally, I typed, "So you chose their approval over your own blood?" No emojis, no hesitation, just raw, unfiltered truth. I leaned back in my creaky chair, my chest tight with a pain so sharp it felt like betrayal had clawed its way inside me. I wasn't just hurt, I was obliterated. For years, I'd been the silent cornerstone of our family, the one who fixed their messes, bankrolled their crises, and swallowed their insults. But this was a wound so deep it burned through every ounce of loyalty I'd clung to. Without a second thought, I flipped open my laptop, logged into the wedding planner's portal, and canceled the $5,000 venue deposit for Chloe's dream wedding at a sprawling estate in Napa Valley. It was in my name, paid with my credit card, a fact Chloe and our parents Susan and Michael hadn't even registered. The best part? The deposit was non-refundable. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding not with guilt but with a fierce, electrifying clarity. They had no idea what was coming. Our family, the Harpers, was a tangled web of dysfunction, cloaked in the polished facade of upper-middle-class Chicago life. Susan, 60, was a high school principal with a smile as rehearsed as her parent-teacher conferences. Michael, 62, a retired financial advisor, ruled the household with a gruff, old-school dominance that left no room for dissent. Chloe, the golden child, had been pampered since birth, her every whim indulged while I was expected to serve, sacrifice, and stay silent. I'd grown up in their shadow, a quiet, creative kid who learned early that love came with a price tag. I'd spent my 30s building a steady, if not glamorous, career in graphic design. I wasn't rich, but I was meticulous, saving every dollar and tracking every expense in spreadsheets that doubled as a ledger of my family's ingratitude. Over the years, I'd bailed them out repeatedly, $6,000 when Michael mismanaged his IRA withdrawal, $3,200 when Chloe's bachelorette party trashed a Lake Michigan Airbnb, $5,500 when Susan forgot to pay the caterer for Chloe's engagement party. Each time I was thanked with backhanded jabs or outright dismissal. Michael once sneered while I repaired their flooded basement in a torrential downpour that I'd make a great housekeeper since I clearly wasn't tough enough to be the breadwinner. Susan laughed. Chloe smirked. I, soaked and humiliated, bit my tongue. When Chloe got engaged to Dylan, a slick tech entrepreneur with a penthouse and a smug grin, the family's favoritism hit a fever pitch. They planned the proposal together, Michael even tagging along to pick the ring at a swanky Michigan Avenue jeweler. Me? I found out via a grainy Zoom call, Chloe gushing while our parents cheered in the background. I should have seen the pattern, but a stubborn flicker of hope kept me tethered. I threw myself into the wedding preparations, believing that maybe, just maybe, my efforts would earn me a place in their hearts. I designed the wedding website, negotiated a deal with a high-end florist, booked a luxurious vineyard estate for out-of-town guests, and paid the venue deposit when Susan's card mysteriously declined. All the while, they treated me like hired help, tossing me scraps of praise laced with condescension. The whispers started a month ago. First, a text from my cousin, Rachel. "Heard you're not invited to the ceremony. Is that true?" Then a DM from my uncle Tom. Did you piss off Dylan's dad or something? The final blow was a Facebook post, a photo of Chloe, Dylan, and our parents beaming in front of a Napa Valley barn strung with fairy lights. The caption read, "Counting down to the big day with our perfect family by our side." I wasn't tagged. A comment from Chloe's friend asked, "Is Alex coming? He's always been so chill." Chloe's reply, "Keeping it intimate, just the people we trust." My stomach churned. Trust? I'd given them everything, money, time, loyalty, and they'd spat in my face. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, scrolling through years of receipts, emails, and Venmo requests, each one a brick in the wall of their exploitation. I wasn't just the family fixer. I was their ATM, their punching bag, their invisible cog. And now they'd discarded me like a used napkin, all because Dylan's father, a pompous venture capitalist named Gregory, thought my vibe was too artsy for their curated wedding aesthetic. Gregory didn't like that I wore a black blazer to a brunch, or that I'd questioned a $4,000 catering discrepancy that Susan brushed off with a breezy, "Just trust us." I was done trusting. I opened the shared Google Drive folder labeled Chloe and Dylan Wedding. Inside were 92 files I'd uploaded: vendor contracts, guest lists, custom Canva designs for invitations, seating charts, and welcome signs. With a single click, I deleted them all. Then I renamed the folder "Good Luck Without Me." I didn't send a warning. Let them discover the chaos when the florist doesn't show, when the photographer ghosts, when the venue emails. This reservation has been canceled by the account holder. I leaned back, a grim smile tugging at my lips. They thought I'd stay quiet, play the dutiful son, swallow the betrayal like always. They were wrong. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a group text from Susan. "Hey family, can everyone chip in for Chloe's bridal shower decor? Alex, since you're so good with design, can you whip up an RSVP page?" XOXO. The audacity was staggering. 10 minutes later, Chloe messaged me directly. "Can you do this one thing without being a jerk?" I didn't reply. Instead, I logged back into the venue's portal and requested a refund of the $5,000 deposit. It was non-refundable, but I'd purchased wedding insurance, a detail no one else had noticed. I filed a claim citing family conflict and got 90% back. Then I opened Canva and deleted every design I'd created. RSVPs, table assignments, welcome signs, gone. In their place, I uploaded a single file titled "Ask Gregory to Fix This" and shared it with the family. The fallout was immediate. Susan called, her voice shrill with panic. "What are you doing, Alex? Do you know how this looks?" My response was ice cold. "I do. That's why I did it." Michael called next, skipping straight to fury. "You're jealous of Chloe, always have been. You can't stand her having a better life." I held the phone away, his voice a distant roar, and hung up. Chloe posted a cryptic Instagram story. "Betrayal cuts deepest from those you love." Susan followed with a photo of Chloe crying, captioned, "Nothing hurts more than your own brother trying to sabotage your dream day." Friends and cousins flooded my inbox, some with concern, most with accusations. "Why would you ruin her wedding?" I didn't respond. Then came the package. A plain manila envelope arrived at my loft, no return address. Inside was a printed screenshot of a group chat between Chloe and her bridesmaids. Chloe's words were damning. "We'll get Alex to cover the cake. Just guilt him about being the big brother. Works every time." Another message. "Dylan says Alex creeps him out, LOL." A third. "He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it." Taped to the screenshot was a sticky note in unfamiliar handwriting. "You deserve better. Jay." I didn't know who Jay was, but I intended to find out. I reached out to an old colleague, Lauren, who ran a digital forensics firm. Lauren traced the screenshot to a WhatsApp backup linked to Chloe's old number. She also uncovered audio files, recordings of Chloe laughing about manipulating me, Dylan mocking me, and Susan dismissing my contributions. The evidence was ironclad, verified as authentic with metadata to boot. I didn't want revenge, I wanted reckoning, and I knew exactly when to strike: Chloe's rehearsal dinner. I'd been the family's silent donor for too long. 6 months ago, Chloe called me in tears, saying Dylan had been laid off and their Gold Coast apartment was 3 months behind on rent. I transferred $4,500 from my savings without a second thought. It was the third bailout that year: $6,000 for Michael's retirement fund blunder, $3,200 for the Airbnb disaster. I kept screenshots, not for leverage, but to prove to myself I wasn't imagining the slow bleed of my resources. They treated me like a servant after every favor. Susan once told me I was too sensitive when I called out Michael's housekeeper jab. Chloe rolled her eyes when I asked to be repaid for the engagement shoot. They needed me, but they didn't value me. Now, as I sat in my loft, the weight of their betrayal settled like a stone in my chest. I wasn't just uninvited, I was erased. But I wasn't the same Alex who'd fixed their gutters in a storm or paid their bills at 3 a.m. I was done being their puppet. The rehearsal dinner was in 2 days, and I was ready to pull the strings apart. The Chicago skyline glittered through my loft's floor-to-ceiling windows, a mocking reminder of the life I'd scraped together while my family bled me dry. I, Alex Harper, 38, sat in the dim glow of my desk lamp, the sting of Chloe's text. "You're not invited to the wedding, Alex. Dylan's family doesn't want you there," still burning like a fresh wound. My fingers twitched with the urge to smash something, but instead I opened my laptop again, staring at the empty Google Drive folder I'd renamed "Good Luck Without Me." The 92 files I'd deleted, vendor contracts, guest lists, Canva designs, were gone. A digital funeral pyre for the wedding I'd built brick by brick. I hadn't just canceled the $5,000 venue deposit, I'd obliterated their perfect little fantasy, and yet the rage inside me wasn't sated. It was a hungry beast, clawing for more. I leaned back, my chair creaking under the weight of years of unspoken resentment. Chloe's betrayal wasn't a one-off. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being the Harper family's invisible crutch. My parents, Susan and Michael, had always treated me like a utility, useful when needed, ignored when not. Chloe, my younger sister by 9 years, was their golden idol, her every achievement polished and paraded while my sacrifices were swept under the rug. I'd been their fixer, their bank, their scapegoat, and now they'd discarded me like a worn-out tool because Dylan's father, Gregory, a smug venture capitalist, thought my artsy vibe didn't fit their Napa Valley aesthetic. The audacity was staggering, but the pain, that was soul-crushing. Rewind 6 months. It was a frigid February evening, the kind where Chicago's wind cuts through your bones. My phone rang at 11 p.m., Chloe's name flashing on the screen. Her voice was a tear-soaked mess, barely coherent. "Alex, we're in trouble. Dylan got laid off and we're 3 months behind on rent. The landlord's threatening eviction by Monday." I could hear the panic in her voice, the kind that makes your chest tighten. I didn't hesitate. I logged into my bank app and transferred $4,500 from my savings, draining half of what I'd set aside for a new design workstation. "Call me if you need anything else," I told her, my voice steady despite the knot in my gut. She sniffled a thank you, but it felt hollow, like a script she'd rehearsed. That was the third bailout that year. The first was in January when Michael called, his voice gruff with embarrassment. He'd accidentally over-withdrawn from his IRA, triggering a $6,000 penalty. "I just need a little help, Alex," he'd said, as if I were a bank teller, not his son. I sent the money, my savings taking another hit. The second was in March when Susan casually mentioned that Chloe's bachelorette party had trashed a Lake Michigan Airbnb. The bill, $3,200 for damages, was on my credit card because Susan's wasn't working. I paid it, swallowing the resentment as Susan waved it off with, "You're so good with these things, Alex." Good. That's what they always called me. Good Alex, reliable Alex, the guy who'd fix their messes and smile through the humiliation. I kept spreadsheets, not because I planned to weaponize them, but because I needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. Every Venmo request, every PayPal receipt, every email begging for just one more favor was documented, a ledger of my family's exploitation. It wasn't just the money, though I'd shelled out over $20,000 in the past 2 years alone. It was the way they treated me after, like a servant, a propriedad. Michael once laughed while I was knee-deep in their flooded basement, fixing a sump pump in a thunderstorm, that I'd make a great janitor since I wasn't alpha enough to run the show. Susan chuckled, her eyes glinting with amusement. Chloe, perched on the stairs, smirked. I was drenched, my hands raw, but I said nothing. I never did. Their mockery wasn't new. Growing up, I was the sensitive one, the kid who'd rather sketch in a notebook than play football. Michael locked me out of the house once in high school because I came home wearing a black hoodie and eyeliner, calling it unmanly. Susan dismissed my hurt as overreacting, saying he was just old school. Old school. That was their excuse for every slight, every jab, every time they made me feel like I was less. Chloe, meanwhile, was their princess. Her dance recitals were family events. My art shows were nice hobbies. When she got into college, they threw a party. When I landed my first big design client, Susan said, "That's cute, Alex." Cute. When Chloe got engaged to Dylan last year, the family's favoritism hit a nauseating peak. They planned the proposal like it was a military operation, Michael even joining Dylan to pick out a $10,000 ring at a Gold Coast jeweler. I found out through a glitchy Zoom call, Chloe's face glowing as Susan and Michael cheered behind her. I should have seen the pattern, but a foolish part of me still believed that if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. So I poured myself into the wedding. I designed a sleek website complete with a custom RSVP portal. I negotiated a $2,000 discount with a top-tier florist. I booked a stunning vineyard estate for out-of-town guests after Dylan's parents called the original venue too rustic. I paid the $5,000 venue deposit when Susan's card wouldn't go through. I was building their dream, pixel by pixel, dollar by dollar, while they fed me scraps of praise laced with disdain. The cracks started showing months ago, subtle but sharp. At a family brunch, I wore a black blazer, my signature style, and Gregory, Dylan's father, gave me a once-over, his lip curling. "Bit intense, don't you think?" he said, loud enough for the table to hear. Chloe laughed nervously. Susan changed the subject, but the message was clear. I didn't belong. Then there was the $4,000 catering discrepancy. I'd noticed the invoice didn't add up and asked Susan about it. Her response was a breezy, "Just trust us, Alex." When I pressed, Michael snapped, "Stop being so paranoid." I dropped it, but the seed of doubt took root. The whispers grew louder. My cousin Rachel texted, "Heard you're not invited to the ceremony? What's up?" My Uncle Tom DM'd, "Did you say something to Dylan's dad?" Then came the Facebook post that shattered me. A photo of Chloe, Dylan, Susan, and Michael, all smiles in front of a Napa barn draped in fairy lights. The caption, "Counting down to the big day with our perfect family by our side." I wasn't tagged. A friend of Chloe's commented, "Is Alex going to be there? He's always so fun." Chloe's reply, "Keeping it small, just the people we trust." Trust. The word hit like a sledgehammer. I'd given them everything, $12,000 in wedding expenses alone, and they'd erased me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my loft, the city's hum a distant drone, and scrolled through years of evidence, emails begging for money, Venmo requests for emergencies, texts where Chloe called me the family's free designer. I was their silent donor, the one who gave without expecting anything back. And what did I get? Side glances, forgotten birthdays, jokes about my sensitivity. They'd forgotten my 35th, 36th, and 37th birthdays, blaming it on the group chat algorithm. They'd mocked me at dinners, Susan saying I was too dramatic when I called out their barbs. Chloe had become the daughter they'd always wanted, while I was just Alex, useful, quiet, disposable. The package that arrived the next day was the final straw. A plain manila envelope, no return address. Inside, a screenshot of Chloe's group chat with her bridesmaids. Her words were venomous. "We'll get Alex to pay for the cake. Just guilt him about being the big brother. Works every time." Another, "Dylan says Alex creeps him out, LOL." A third, "He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it." A sticky note was taped to it in unfamiliar handwriting. "You deserve better. Jay." I didn't know who Jay was, but I was going to find out. I called Lauren, an old colleague who ran a digital forensics firm. She traced the screenshot to a WhatsApp backup linked to Chloe's old number. Better yet, she found audio files, recordings of Chloe cackling about manipulating me, Dylan sneering that I was too intense, Susan dismissing my contributions as no big deal. The evidence was bulletproof, backed by metadata. I didn't want petty revenge. I wanted a reckoning. The rehearsal dinner was tomorrow, and I was ready to burn their house of lies to the ground. I wasn't always this angry. Growing up, I'd tried to be the son they wanted. I mowed the lawn, got straight A's, never talked back. But nothing was enough. When Chloe was born, the family's focus shifted. Her first steps were a celebration. My first art award was nice. By high school, I'd learned to keep my head down, channeling my hurt into sketches and designs. I moved out at 18, worked 2 jobs to put myself through college, and built a career while my family leaned on me for favors. I paid for Chloe's senior prom dress when Susan's card didn't work. I covered Michael's car repair when he forgot to budget. I was their safety net, but they never saw me as family, just a resource. Now, as I sat in my loft, the city's lights blurring through my tears, I realized I'd been chasing their approval my whole life. No more. I wasn't the Alex who'd fixed their basement in a storm or paid their bills at midnight. I was done being their pawn. The rehearsal dinner would be their undoing, and I'd be the one holding the match. The Napa Valley estate loomed before me, its rustic charm a veneer over the pretentious opulence within. Fairy lights dangled from ancient oaks, casting a golden glow across the vineyard's sprawling grounds. But to me, it was a stage set for a farce. I, Alex Harper, 38, stood at the entrance, my tailored black suit a silent defiance against the family that had cast me out. The rehearsal dinner for my sister Chloe's wedding was in full swing, and I wasn't invited, not after her chilling text. "You're not invited to the wedding, Alex. Dylan's family doesn't want you there." Tonight I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to dismantle their carefully curated lie, armed with evidence that would shatter their perfect facade. My heart thundered, not with fear, but with a molten resolve. The audio files and screenshots from Chloe's group chat, verified by my friend Lauren's digital forensics firm, burned a hole in my pocket. Chloe's voice, smug and cruel, echoed in my mind. "We'll get Alex to pay for the cake. Just guilt him about being the big brother. Works every time." Dylan's sneer. "Alex creeps me out." And the worst, "He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it." For years, I'd been their silent benefactor, pouring over $12,000 into this wedding, website, florist, venue deposit, only to be discarded because Dylan's father, Gregory, deemed my artsy vibe unfit for their polished tableau. Tonight, they'd learn the cost of betrayal. I stepped through the arched doorway, the hum of laughter and clinking glasses faltering as heads turned. Chloe, 29, froze mid-toast, her champagne flute trembling in her manicured hand. Dylan, her slick tech bro fiancé, let his arm slip from her shoulder, his eyes narrowing. Susan, my mother, 60, averted her gaze, her principal's poise crumbling. Michael, my father, 62, flushed crimson, his jaw tight with barely contained rage. The room, packed with relatives and Dylan's elite circle, buzzed with confusion. They hadn't expected me. In their script, I was the bitter outcast. The brother who'd slunk away after canceling the $5,000 venue deposit and deleting 92 files from their wedding folder. But I wasn't bitter. I was done. I strode to the front of the room, my steps deliberate, and tapped a crystal glass with a spoon. The chatter died, replaced by an uneasy silence. "Sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice steady but laced with a razor's edge. A nervous chuckle rippled through the crowd. Chloe's eyes narrowed, her lips parting as if to protest. I pulled a small Bluetooth speaker from my jacket and set it on the table, then held up a USB drive, its sleek black surface glinting under the chandeliers. Dylan stood, his voice shaky but sharp. "What the hell are you doing, Alex?" I locked eyes with him, my gaze unflinching. "Giving you exactly what you deserve." I pressed play. Chloe's voice blared through the speaker, smug and vicious. "We'll get Alex to pay for the cake. Just guilt him about being the big brother. Works every time." Gasps erupted. A wine glass tipped over, splashing red across a pristine tablecloth. Dylan's face drained of color as his own voice followed. "Alex creeps me out. He's too intense." Then Chloe again, low and venomous. "He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it." I paused the audio, letting the silence choke the room like a noose. "Any questions?" I asked, my tone daring them to speak. Michael surged to his feet, veins bulging in his neck. "You think this is funny? Sit down." His voice was a bellow, the kind that used to make me shrink as a kid, but I wasn't that kid anymore. I didn't flinch. "No, Dad, you sit." For the first time in my life he did, his bravado collapsing like a house of cards. I turned to Chloe, who was trembling, mascara streaking her face like black tears. "I spent over $12,000 on your wedding," I said, my voice low but searing. "I built your website, negotiated your venue, paid your florist. I did it because I thought, stupidly, that we were family, but you didn't want a brother. You wanted a wallet." I pulled a thick folder from my bag stuffed with hard copies. PayPal receipts, invoices, screenshots of texts where Chloe called me the family's free designer, where Susan dismissed my questions about a $4,000 catering discrepancy, where Michael mocked my sensitive nature. I handed the stack to Dylan, who stared at it like it was radioactive. "Still want to marry her?" I asked, my words sharp enough to cut glass. He didn't answer, his jaw clenched, his eyes darting to Chloe. Then Lauren stood from the back, her presence a quiet storm. She was in her early 40s, her gray blazer crisp, a badge from her digital forensics firm clipped to her pocket. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "I'm Lauren, Alex's friend. He asked me to verify these files. The audio is 100% authentic. No edits, no fakes. Pulled from Chloe's WhatsApp backup, linked to her old number. I've got the metadata if anyone's curious." She held up her phone, a faint smile playing on her lips. Chloe's mouth fell open, a silent scream. Susan gasped, clutching her pearls. Michael barked, "This is a damn setup." Lauren's smile sharpened. "Not even close." The room erupted. My cousin Rachel stood, her voice shrill as she yelled at Susan, "You let this happen." A bridesmaid knocked over another glass, the crash punctuating the chaos. Chloe lunged for Dylan's arm, sobbing, "It's not what it sounds like." He jerked away, his face a mask of betrayal. "You told me Alex was unstable, that he threatened you. You lied." I stood motionless, watching the pandemonium unfold like a wildfire I'd ignited. Their curated world, the one they'd built on my money, my labor, my silence, was burning. I raised my voice, cutting through the din like a blade. "I'm not coming to your wedding. You made that choice. But now you'll do it without my money, my help, or my silence." I turned to my parents, my gaze unflinching. "You cut me out the moment I stopped being your puppet, so I'm cutting the strings." The room fell silent, the weight of my words sinking in. Then Dylan spoke, his voice loud and final. "I'm done, Chloe. The wedding's off." Chloe's scream was raw, a piercing wail that sliced through the air like shattered glass. "You can't do this! Not here!" I glanced back, my expression cold as steel. He just did. I walked out, the vineyard's twinkling lights fading behind me, the sound of their world collapsing echoing in my ears. No dramatic music, no slow-motion exit, just the quiet satisfaction of justice served. The drive back to Chicago was a blur, the highway stretching into the night like a ribbon of regret. I didn't feel triumphant, not yet. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a hollow ache. For years, I'd been the family's backbone, pouring my heart into their dreams while they mocked me, used me, erased me. I designed Chloe's wedding website, negotiated a $2,000 discount with the florist, booked a luxurious estate for guests, paid the $5,000 venue deposit. I'd bailed them out of countless crises. $4,500 for Chloe's rent, $6,000 for Michael's IRA penalty, $3,200 for the trashed Airbnb. And what did I get? Forgotten birthdays, snide remarks, a Facebook post calling them the perfect family without me. The package from Jay had been the catalyst. I still didn't know who Jay was, but Lauren's investigation suggested it was someone close to Chloe's circle, possibly a disillusioned bridesmaid. The screenshots and audio were damning, but it was the sticky note, "You deserve better," that hit hardest. It was a reminder that I wasn't crazy, that my family's betrayal was real. Lauren's verification gave me the ammunition I needed, but it was the years of hurt, the janitor jabs, the too sensitive dismissals, the locked doors in high school that fueled my resolve. I pulled into my loft at 2 a.m., the city's neon glow a stark contrast to the darkness inside me. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Missed calls from Susan, Michael, Chloe, even Rachel. Texts piled up. "How could you do this? You've ruined everything." Chloe posted another Instagram story, a black screen with white text. "Some people will destroy your happiness to feel better about themselves." Susan shared a photo of Chloe crying, captioned, "No pain cuts deeper than family betrayal." The hypocrisy was nauseating. They were painting me as the villain, but I wasn't the one who'd lied, manipulated, and discarded my own blood. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat by the window, the city's pulse a distant hum. The rehearsal dinner had been my stand, but it wasn't the end. I'd already canceled the venue deposit, deleted their files, and reclaimed my power. But there was more to come. They thought I'd slink back, apologize, fix their mess like always. They were wrong. I wasn't just walking away, I was vanishing, leaving them to face the consequences of their greed. The next morning, I met Lauren for coffee at a quiet cafe in Wicker Park. She slid a USB drive across the table, her expression grim. "There's more," she said. "I found additional chats. They were planning to ask you for $10,000 for the honeymoon, framing it as a family gift." I laughed, a bitter sound. Of course they were. Lauren leaned forward. "You don't owe them anything, Alex. Not after this." I nodded, but the ache in my chest didn't ease. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted freedom. Back at my loft, I packed a duffel bag. I wasn't staying in Chicago, not with their calls and guilt trips flooding my inbox. I'd already leased a cabin in a tiny coastal town in Oregon, population 700, where no one knew my name. I'd paid 6 months up front, no forwarding address, no digital trail. The rehearsal dinner was my final act in their world. Now I was ready to build my own. The Oregon coast stretched before my cabin, a jagged line of cliffs and churning waves that roared with a raw, untamed fury. I, Alex Harper, 38, stood on the porch of my new home in Tideview, population 700, a thermos of black coffee warming my hands. The air was sharp with salt and promise, a stark contrast to the suffocating weight of Chicago, where my family's betrayal had nearly broken me. Chloe's text. "You're not invited to the wedding, Alex. Dylan's family doesn't want you there," still lingered like a scar. But here in this forgotten corner of the world, it was losing its power. I'd walked away from the wreckage of their lies. leaving behind the $12,000 I'd poured into their wedding, the 92 files I'd deleted, and the chaos of their rehearsal dinner. Now I was rebuilding, not for them, but for me. The cabin was small, weathered, with creaky floors and a view of the Pacific that made my chest ache with its vastness. I'd leased it a month before the rehearsal dinner, paying 6 months up front with no forwarding address, no digital breadcrumbs. The first 3 days, I kept my phone off, my laptop closed. I sat on this porch, listening to gulls squabble over scraps and waves crash against rocks, their rhythm a reminder that the world kept moving without my family's drama. The tension in my shoulders, the knot in my gut, the constant hum of guilt, they dissolved into the briny air. I didn't feel triumphant, not yet. I felt free. Tideview was the kind of place where time slowed, where the diner served coffee strong enough to strip paint and the gas station doubled as the post office. No one knew me here, and that was the point. I'd left Chicago the night after the rehearsal dinner, driving west under a starless sky, the memory of Chloe's scream. "You can't do this." Fading with every mile, I'd exposed their lies with Lauren's audio files. Chloe's smug. "We'll get Alex to pay for the cake. Just guilt him about being the big brother." Dylan's sneer. "Alex creeps me out." Her final vow. "He won't be at the wedding. I'll make sure of it." I'd handed Dylan the folder of receipts, invoices, and texts, watched him call off the wedding, and walked out as their perfect world burned. They thought I'd come crawling back, like I always had. They were wrong. On day 4 in Tideview, I wandered into town, my boots crunching on gravel. The local community college, a squat brick building overlooking the harbor, offered an archival studies program that caught my eye. I'd always loved history. Old letters, faded photos, the unfiltered truth of the past. In Chicago, I'd buried that passion under my family's demands, but here I signed up, my heart racing with a quiet thrill. I also volunteered at the Tideview Historical Society, a cramped museum stuffed with 1940s fishing logs and sepia portraits. I cataloged photos, repaired a clunky microfilm reader, and found a rhythm that was mine alone. No one asked for money. No one mocked my sensitivity. For the first time, I wasn't fixing someone else's mess. I was building something for myself. The messages started a week later. My old Gmail linked to an emergency phone I rarely checked, lit up with subject lines. "Can we talk?" "You went too far, Alex." "We're still family." Blocked calls piled up, dozens from Susan, Chloe, even Michael. I didn't respond. Their panic wasn't about remorse, it was about control. They couldn't stand my silence, the absence of their favorite pawn. They didn't fear the evidence I'd aired at the rehearsal dinner. They feared my irrelevance. Lauren had warned me they'd try to reel me back in. "Narcissists hate losing their audience," she'd said over coffee in Chicago. She was right. My family wasn't sorry. They were scared I was gone for good. 2 weeks in, a legal notice arrived at my old Chicago address forwarded by a neighbor. Michael had tried to sell a family cabin in Wisconsin, unaware I'd placed a lien on the deed 3 years ago after he nearly lost it in a shady refinance deal. His buyer bailed, the deal collapsed, and a fraud investigation followed. I hadn't orchestrated it. I'd simply let his greed run its course. The consequences were his own. I smiled, not out of spite, but because I'd finally stopped catching their falls. I made friends in Tideview, slowly. Walt, the grizzled curator at the museum, shared my love for obscure history, regaling me with tales of 19th century shipwrecks over greasy diner breakfasts. Nora, a barista with a penchant for terrible puns, slipped me free coffee and called me the mysterious newbie. They didn't know my past, and I didn't offer it. For the first time, I wasn't defined by my family's demands or their mockery. I was just Alex, the guy who fixed microfilm machines and sketched the coastline in his spare time. A month after the rehearsal dinner, I drove back to Napa, not to confront my family, but to see the vineyard one last time. The venue was a ghost of itself, abandoned, a for sale sign sagging on the gate. A wilted bouquet lay crushed in the gravel, its petals scattered like broken promises. I parked, rolled down my window, and breathed in the scent of rain and ruin. It felt right, like the universe had closed a chapter. Before leaving, I slipped an envelope into the venue's rusted mailbox. No return address, just a copy of the final $5,000 invoice I'd paid and a post-it note. Thanks for nothing. Back in Tideview, my new life took root. I enrolled in a second archival course, diving into the preservation of oral histories. I started a sketchbook, filling it with drawings of the coast, the diner, Nora's lopsided grin. I rarely checked my old email, but when I did, the flood of unread messages brought a strange satisfaction. One read, "Please, Alex, just talk to us." Another, "We don't know who you are anymore." I smiled at that. They were right. I wasn't their fixer, their scapegoat, their shadow. I was Alex Harper, a man with a life they couldn't touch. The calls and emails dwindled, but the desperation lingered. Chloe posted a vague Instagram story. "Some wounds never heal." Susan shared a photo of Chloe, her eyes red, captioned, "Family shouldn't tear each other apart." The irony was sickening. They were still playing the victims, but without my money, my labor, or my presence, their narrative rang hollow. Lauren sent me a text. "Heard Dylan moved to San Francisco. Chloe's living with your parents again." I didn't reply. Their chaos was no longer my problem. One morning, I walked to Tideview's post office to pick up a package, art supplies I'd ordered. Behind me, two locals gossiped. "Heard that big Napa wedding got canceled after the groom walked out," one said. "Yeah, and the bride's brother disappeared, took all his money with him." I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I'd become a ghost in their story, and that was power enough. My new mailbox arrived that spring, a sturdy metal box with a lock that didn't budge. The technician asked what name to engrave. I shook my head. No name, just a message. Now, etched on a brass plate below the keyhole, it reads, "This box does not accept apologies." Every time I open it, I'm reminded that I'm free, not just from their demands, but from the version of myself that lived for their approval. I changed everything. My phone number, now with a new carrier and a different area code, is unlisted. I closed the joint account Michael had linked to me for emergencies, redirected my bank statements to a private digital vault, updated my medical power of attorney to remove all family names. I even changed the emergency contact on my driver's license to a friend from the museum. They don't know where I live, where I work, or if I'm even in the country, and that, I realized, is what terrifies them most. Narcissists don't fear consequences, they fear being forgotten. By vanishing, I'd taken away their stage, their audience, their control. Tideview isn't paradise. The winters are brutal, the internet's spotty, but it's mine. I'm not the Alex who covered their bills at 3 a.m., who fixed their basement in a storm, who paid for their dreams while they mocked me. I'm a man who's found peace in the quiet, who's building a life that doesn't bend to anyone else's will. The ocean keeps its secrets, and so do I. In the shadow of Tideview's cliffs, I found more than refuge. I found myself. My family's betrayal was a crucible, one that could have consumed me but instead forged a stronger version of Alex Harper. Chloe, Dylan, Susan, and Michael may still cling to their fractured story, painting me as the villain who tore their world apart. But without my support, their lives feel empty, a performance with no applause. I didn't destroy them out of spite. I set myself free. My silence isn't weakness. It's a choice, a deliberate severing of ties that bound me to their greed. As the waves crash against the shore, they carry a truth my family will never grasp. Some bonds are better broken than born, and true freedom comes not from forgiveness, but from walking away. In Tideview, I'm writing a new story, one where the only voice that matters is my own.